return to win.
What the is this guy doing?
Well, I just want to say you're an absolute legend.
Holy mac and cheese balls. That's another podium.
That was stupid from whoever was at the front. They want to kill us or what? Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Olá, sejam muito bem-vindos ao último episódio da segunda temporada do Domingos. Uma vez mais a terminar em Abu Dhabi, sem escandaleira este ano. Foi um aborrecimento. Já tínhamos saudades de grandes prémios calmos. Beatriz, diz olá às pessoas.
Olá a todos, último episódio, está quase?
Está quase, todos prontos para o Natal. Hoje não temos o engenheiro João e, portanto, fomos uma vez mais ao estrangeiro importar um convidado. E, como tal, vamos fazer o resto deste programa em inglês. Bem. Hi, Pete. Welcome to Domingos. So, today we have Pete Jones, very well famous super celebrity from the Formula One world. He joined us directly from the FIA. Is that correct, Pete?
Yes. Hi, Targo. Hi, Beatrice. Pete Jones, senior aerodynamicist at the FIA.
Boom. There you go.
Definitely made me a celebrity. But thank you for having me.
It's
You're
quite
welcome.
niche.
So, Pete, rules of the game here. Everything is allowed. Okay, so feel free. Listen, open conversation
Except,
about
wait,
Formula
but just to give a fair warning, except you can't make fun of Sainz because I like him. You can't make fun of Latifi because Thiago likes him. And
Who
no one
doesn't
likes
like
Hamilton. You should be fine as long as you don't like Hamilton.
Okay, well, I'm glad we've got some rules because I need to set some ground rules of my own.
Go
Go
for it.
ahead, Pete.
I know it's your podcast, but I have a job that I don't want to lose. So
Fair enough.
so rule number one is we won't talk about financials.
Okay.
Does that wait? Sorry, cost cap is that does that consider financials or
Sorry, cost what?
cost cap? Can we talk about cost cap?
Yeah, no, we can't. No.
Okay.
Rule number two: we can't talk about current cars or anything that might make me slip up and give something away about current championship.
When you mean current cars,
so we
are we
can talk
talking
about
about
the
2023 or 2022?
2022. So we can talk about
Okay,
the
okay.
past and the future, just not the present, and nothing to do with money.
I have so many questions, but I'll respect your ground rules. I won't ask them.
I guess,
hopefully-
Beatriz, we make the questions and then we can just be welcome with silence.
Yes.
Yep. But hopefully, my boss has now heard me say that. He's pressed stop,
He's not worried anymore.
so it's fair game from now on. It's okay.
Nice.
Just had to get it in at the start.
Mhm.
Nice. So, Pete, before FII, you were part of Red Bull, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I started at Red Bull after graduating.
Okay. So once again, we have a guest that will defend Red Bull, and will say that Red Bull is perfect and there's nothing wrong about Red Bull, and Max Verstappen is the best driver in the world.
Well, he is.
João, you're very well represented here.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you had Blake on recently,
Yes.
We did.
which I think is a bit unfair because he is a professional content creator, and I'm more of a professional content absorber. So sort of stitch me up a bit there.
Okay. Well, we'll let's see what we can do. What we can pull here then. So let's start race. And usually we start by qualifying and then we do race, but let's just talk about everything together because there's really not much to talk here.
It's
So-
a pretty boring race, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. There was really not much here happening. I think it was like very interesting just because you had the two Red Bulls starting in the front rows, and then the 2 Ferraris, and then the 2 Mercedes. It was very neat, you know. It was like,
Yeah.
I think it was a perfect summary of the year.
Yeah, I think anyone with sort of OCD or love for neatness would have liked it to begin with. I personally thought it was had a few exciting sort of moments with the shootout for silver medal.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree it wasn't a classic.
Let's talk about that then. How are we feeling about Leclerc taking second place from Sergio?
I guess it's quite telling for Ferrari and Leclerc season that he came to managed to hang on to second place with the car that they had and the car that they started with. So yeah, I think it's probably fair for a Ferrari driver to take second place in the end. I think it was good to see that come quite close towards the end. Yeah, I think that
hmm
you can dissect it a few different ways. I think that probably you can argue that Checo let it go a bit with a few mistakes. But yeah, I think Charles ultimately probably declares deserves his second place.
Yeah,
Agreed.
will just be weird, Beatrice, now, don't you think? That, I mean, Checo at no point in the season was fighting for the championship, and Leclerc was actually fighting at, like, I don't know, like for 6 races. Doesn't really
But he
matter.
was fighting
he
for
was.
first place. Yes, for
He was
first
fighting for
place.
first place, and that was just
Yes.
weird if he ended behind Checo. So for me, it
Would
was,
it though?
was
I
fair.
mean, I'm a Ferrari fan, and still, I feel like Checo had a good fighting chance. I think his biggest mistake was definitely having
Fighting
Max
chance
as
for the second spot, or like
yeah,
for the championship?
No, for second place, not for first. I think his biggest mistake was definitely having Max as a
Verstappen
teammate. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I agree.
Which I feel was screwed him over in the end. I don't think he made that many mistakes, at least not more than most of the drivers have, especially at top, fighting for top positions. I think he got very unlucky, and I've been a big fan of Max for many years, and I was just disappointed.
But for this race, do you think that it was strategy the problem?
I wouldn't say so. I don't think it would make sense. I agree with Max saying that it wouldn't be fair racing to try to delay Leclerc in Abu Dhabi. I think Brazil was the issue for me.
Pete, any view on this? From a FIA standpoint, not like purely FIA standpoint. Official statement.
In terms of what went wrong with Checo's chances for second place,
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you think that this? I mean, like, obviously Brazil, those points made the difference at the end. But even on this race, the strategy wrong, or Perez simply didn't have the pace for Leclerc, which ultimately proves the point that Leclerc really deserved this second place,
well, I think that
or did he get screwed up?
I think that when Checo had done his second stop, I think that I felt that Ferrari and Red Bull both sort of expected Checo to catch him. And I think that it's testament to Charles' management of the hard tyre on his second stint that he kept him at bay. I think that we can also, don't want to be overcritical, but you can look at a few mistakes that Checo made. I suppose he had 2 goes at getting past Lewis, didn't he? He perhaps should have known to go for the second DRS zone on the first try rather than having 2 goes at it. He also had a bit of a tussle with Seb, I think, that cost him a second or so. That maybe,
and then overlapping as well. It took him a while.
He got stuck in traffic.
Yeah. But these are all things that mini mistakes that characterize a driver and characterize any race. So it's hard to completely blame him. But yeah, you can sort of see a way that he could have got out of that.
I blame Max 100%. Also, the fact that he can just, ignore team orders when it's not even about, loyalty or friendship, none of those things. But the fact that a driver can, ignore team orders in a way that will cost them money. This is what I thought was really, critical Because how many millions has this cost Red Bull? The fact that Sergio didn't get second place. I would love to know that.
Actually, I
I
don't
know
know.
we
That's
can.
a-
I know
that's a
we
good
can't.
question.
I know we can't talk financials, but I would love to know how much this little stunt cost Red Bull. That's what I'm interested in
Does
finding
it
out.
really make difference, Beatrice? Because isn't by the
Yes.
construction championship that they get?
No, but in terms of well, Pete, help us out. Does it make a difference?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, the fight at the end where Aston nearly gained a place in the constructors, that was,
Yes,
they were saying 12 million, were they? on
12 million.
commentary?
Yeah, that's what they were saying. Which they
But
missed.
yeah, I don't know what the upshot is of the Checo's place in the championship. But I imagine you guys covered all the team orders debate last week, right?
Oh yeah, but
Mhm.
we can always open that. It's how to say it's a Pandora box. So go for it.
Okay, well, there's probably wasn't really much point in me saying it because I'm firmly on the fence when it comes to team orders. I think that there's no clear the reason why it keeps coming up as a problem is that there is no right or wrong answer, and the fact that it's moral. There's very different moral viewpoints which will give you different opinions on the matter. But I think the main thing is that it's a great part of the sport, in my view, how you have this the agenda of the team, and then the driver's own personal desires to perform well, and that when they have a conflict between them, and it's not clear which one is the bigger, greater good. And I just think it's that debate and that kind of theatre is great for the sport, and long may it continue, I say.
But Pete, listen. Imagine. Do you play F1 Manager?
No.
Okay, but you know the game, right? Imagine
I've heard of it.
Yeah, imagine you give an order in the game, and the AI of the game just simply decides to ignore you. Wouldn't you just throw the game away, straight to garbage?
I think
They can
I
just
think
decide, to do whatever
to be
they
fair,
want.
I do agree with Pete where I think some team orders are unnecessary, and you should just let them. You should just let drivers race. That doesn't really. I don't really care about helping each other or whatever it is. But in this specific case, I mean, Max was way ahead. He won the championship. Constructors was also won, I think, in
Yes.
Brazil.
Yes.
So why couldn't he? Even if it's how many millions did he cost the team? But also,
We know why, Beatriz. We know
Checo
why.
has a contract until 2024. So the fact that he's actively, going against this relationship is what would worry me, not from a moral or ethical point of view, just in terms of team management. Seems
Yeah.
like a difficult conversation to have.
But what if, just to kind of, as a thought of experiment, what if Checo needed 5 or 6 more points than Charles to come second, and then Checo caught Charles and was coming second in the race, but that wasn't enough to overtake him in the championship. Obviously, it's a bit of a stretch here, but just imagine it.
And then swap positions with Max for first
With
position?
Max.
Yeah, would you order that if you were
No.
Christian Horner?
I mean, Christian, I don't really like him, so I can imagine him say something like this, but I wouldn't order that. I think that wouldn't be fair. It's not the same.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
be necessary. Max, if he was a good person, you'll just, brake immediately, get out of the car, and just tell Perez, please go ahead. You've been such a great guy. I'm a great
Yeah.
friend of yours.
But he has.
sure-
But
I'm
Checo
sure he would
has
do
been
that,
a
yeah.
great guy.
He
Checo
would do
has
this.
been a great teammate. He has been a great guy. So didn't he deserve a little help?
Sure, he ends up third. I guess it's still good. And justice was done. Leclerc deserved the second place. So, and the bright side of everything was that I never liked Verstappen personally. And last year I found myself on the weird situation of rooting for him because he just wanted a new champion, and all this situation makes me or allows me to go back to where I used to be, not liking the guy, and now be able to root against him happily without having conflicting feelings. So it's good. well, like,
Yeah. So
we're fine.
sort of hatred coming back to you like a comfortable
Yes,
pair of slippers.
yes, it's this sense of like, like being everything is normal again. I even think that next year I might be rooting for Hamilton again.
Yeah.
No,
It
I
might
don't
happen.
think that's a bit too extreme. I think.
Let's see. So
Is that not?
let's go. Let's continue with the race because there were other interesting things happening, such as nothing.
Yeah, it was
Seb's
pretty.
last race. Let's go to Seb's last race. How do you
Wait,
feel
did you
about it?
did you ever work with him? I don't know, in terms of timeline. Were you at
Yeah, I
Red
did.
Bull when Seb was there? Okay. What can you tell us about him? Do you like him personally?
Yes. I think he's obviously, as a regulator, we don't have favourites. All we want is a safe and fair, smooth race. But yeah, he was definitely one of my favourites. Seb, definitely a soft spot for him and Mark Webber being the first two drivers that I worked with. Yeah, but my sort of time working with Seb, I was very junior. It was my first role in Formula One, where I was in the operations room doing analysis of aero track data. So my first sort of memories of working in Formula One are at the race event, but at the Milton Keynes factory, sort of connected to the treehouse at the track, listening to debriefs between sessions, and, after sessions, and briefs for the next session, and then spending that time analysing data and helping the team come to decisions on aero test items. So yes, so Seb and Mark were the first two drivers that I really saw in that kind of professional capacity. And yeah, Seb was always just impressive how focused and clinical he was. I think back in those times, and really quick to get on top of the car at new events, and would always knew exactly what he needed to go faster. Was always very clear in his feedback. I think was another thing I noticed. And then I think
Sorry,
I
how
think it was
critical was that feedback compared with the feedback from actual data that you receive, but the feedback of drivers? How critical it was for you to develop the car?
my impression that on the race weekend, then the driver feedback is as important, maybe even more than the data. I don't know if you put a number on it. My feeling is that it's 50-50 what the driver says and what the data tells you. A performance engineer would probably be able to give you a more qualified answer than that. But just from an aero perspective and just watching it unfold, so many decisions are made based on purely what the drivers are saying. Sometimes you have to remember that the driver has a kind of, although the best seat for feeling the performance of the car, they also only have limited sensors. They only have a brake, a accelerator, and steering wheel, so they tend to think that the behavior of the car is related to one of those three things, where there's
Makes
other
sense.
things at play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that driver feedback is probably at least as important as the data.
And how do you feel about the fact that you're lasting longer in Formula One than Seb? Do you feel old?
Well, he got a slight head start on me, but yes, I do feel old.
Good. So, and that's the same with Ricardo. So you also got Ricardo, right? While you were
Yeah,
at Red Bull.
yeah. So Ricardo came, and I think started to see a bit more vulnerability in Seb towards the end of his time at Red Bull. And Ricardo did an amazing job in his first season. I think that.
And in his last, I think, 2018, right?
Yeah, I was gone by then. I think when I left, it was the Kvyat Ricardo era, and I moved on in 2016.
Yeah, it's truly the end of an era here. Do you think that Ricardo? I mean, while Seb is a definite. I mean, is it a definite buy? Like we've
I
seen
think
with this
so.
with Alonso and with Raikkonen. do you think he's coming back, or because at least Ricardo, it's not definite, right? Like supposedly he's going to be a reserve driver for Red Bull, but Sab, what was this decision? I mean, w- was it based on the fact that the beginning of the season was actually not going that well, but then by the end it seemed that he got the love back for the sport and now is regretting it, or
I don't think he's gotten any love back for the sport since his last words were basically, "It's so stupid that we run around in circles." That's literally he said a few words. I don't know if you saw this after the race on Sunday, and he said, "Bye, thank you so much. On to better things now." And also, it's great that I have this platform that I got by running around in circles, which feels unimportant now. So I don't think I think it was a very well thought out decision, and I don't think he's definitely not coming back. I don't know, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when he says things like that, it sounds like he's getting ready for his next career move, doesn't it? But you never know, do
is
you?
he
I
joining
mean,
you at
I'm
FIA
sure.
being like head of sustainability?
Head of morale, I think.
Or something like that?
I think that he doesn't know, does he? So it's impossible for us to predict the future.
You don't think he knows what he's doing next? I mean,
No, I think Formula One seats are so circumstantial and um, driven by availability. So yeah, I think if an opportunity came up for him, then he'd probably have to consider it. But who knows if it will?
He's becoming a consultant, Beatrice.
I think, yeah, definitely like an ambassador I can see him as a sustainability ambassador or something like that.
Or for a hair product, because that was
I
a
mean,
miracle.
his hair magically grew back.
See?
So why
a lot
not?
of career options for Vettel here.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's see. And so we're missing talking about the great Latifi. I mean, like, Formula One just became poorer.
Yeah, we're definitely going to miss Latifi next year. No,
It's just a sad. Do you want a minute of silence for Latifi, or can we move on?
I think it's. I think we can safely move on.
Okay, so that was that. This race ended with Verstappen in the first position, then Leclerc in second, as we discussed, and Perez closed the podium. And there was really no change in the driver standing and constructor standings after this race, but then Beatrice will go about it in a bit. And if you agree, then we can proceed with a bit of an overview of the season. And Pete, I'll ask you straight. I mean, you were part of the team that were designing the new rules, the new aero rules. Now that the season is over, did you achieve your goals? I mean, I guess so, because Mercedes disappeared.
It became exciting again.
Or not
Well,
really?
I think we achieved our main goal, but we had 2 or 3 goals, and I think that there's still definitely work to do. So our number one goal was to improve the aerodynamic interaction between the cars. So the amount that as a following car, you feel the effect of the aerodynamic wake of the car in front. And we wanted to reduce that so that to improve the opportunities for close racing. And a lot of the evidence we've seen is that we achieved that in part. So I'm sure more could be done, but I think there was a definite positive step there, both from the driver feedback and bits of data that we've seen.
Can I ask you about that, Pete? Is that
course.
okay if I press you a little bit on that? Because you announced when you changed the rules for one car length, I think it was 50%. So before, in 2021, there was a 50% loss of downforce. And then you announced it would decrease to 18%. You think you actually managed to achieve that? Because that's a pretty big reduction of loss, for lack of better.
Yeah. It's hard to know. I guess my gut feel is that it didn't. The change wasn't quite that extreme.
Mhm.
But in truth, we don't really know the answer to that. So, yeah, the one car length numbers were quite punchy.
Mhm.
There's nothing to say that we haven't done that.
Mhm.
But yeah, my feeling is that on track, when you're developing a car, the on track performance never quite materializes in the way that you expect it from the wind tunnel and CFD. So just
Mhm.
by the same virtue, I would expect our track performance measurements to be slightly more modest than what we predicted. You know, partly because our predictions were based on our, FIA or Formula One car model, not the final cars that are driving around the track,
Makes
because
sense.
of
Mhm.
course, we didn't know what they were going to be. So for that reason, I would certainly expect that the natural kind of team development of the cars will have slightly eroded what we would have, perhaps had if we all raced the same car. Um, but yeah, so we have had some data from the pitot tubes on the front of the
Mhm.
car, which some teams have kindly shared with us,
Mhm.
and we've been able to compare those to the CFD predictions. So if you imagine just taking all that pitot data from several races, and then looking at looking at it, comparing it against distance that you are following the car in front. So just plotting that all out as a
Mhm.
big mess. On the x-axis, you've got distance, and on the y-axis, you've got the pressure or the reading at the pitot
Yeah.
tube. When we compare that to what we were expecting, it comes out pretty similar. So the air is slightly for every distance behind the car in front. You've got cleaner air to the sort of degree that we predicted from our CFD.
Making it
Problem with
easier
that
to
is that
follow the car ahead. Correct.
exactly, yeah. So you've
Yeah.
got more energy approaching your car in the air, so that you can extract more downforce from the
Mhm.
corners. The problem with that measurement is that it's the pitot, which is just at one position
Mhm.
on top of the nose of each car,
So you
whereas
don't know what's
our
actually happening all around the car.
exactly, yeah, that you'd be, if we could, then ideally we'd put an array of pressure probes out in front of the car and get them to all chase each other around all day, and we'd get lots of interesting data. But so far, we've just been able to look at the pitot.
That would be a fun race to watch.
But do you think that next year, for example, as the teams will obviously improve their cars, will we actually be able to achieve the figures that you're initially aiming for in terms of downforce and or are we like already at is this like completely optimized that that's it, there's nothing here that we that will be different from what was achieved this year?
Do you mean in terms of the following effect,
Yes.
or yeah? No, I don't expect that to get any better. Um, the good news is it shouldn't get much worse from what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that with our confidence is pretty well placed that it will stay. The following effect shouldn't really degrade massively over the next few years.
Mhm.
But yeah, but equally, I don't expect it to naturally get any better.
Okay. So you don't
Um,
think that teams will, something that was discussed at the beginning of the year was that some were afraid that some cars will actually try, kind of as a defensive tactic, make it worse for the cars behind to follow. So you don't think that teams will eventually go on that direction?
no, I don't. I don't think that. I don't think a team would put any focus on what's happening behind their own car.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mhm.
think one reason for that is the aero testing restrictions. So the fact that your wind tunnel hours and your
Mm-hmm.
computational power, your CFD um, compute amount is limited, then I think that it'd be probably a bit foolish to spend any of that on anything other than just your own car's performance.
Okay.
I would say, though, just one last thing about, better racing, making it easier to follow the car ahead. I would say this is also sort of like a joint venture between FIA rules, but also tracks making it easier to overtake. So some improvements, track improvements, I think, make a real difference here. So if everything, I don't think it's just a matter of rules. I don't know what your view
talking
is.
about? What are you
Like
talking
Abu Dhabi, for instance, they
Like-
changed the track a little bit, and they've
No,
mentioned this.
like Imola. You mean Imola? Imola is perfect for this.
No, it's not. That's the point. I feel like this should be like something that more than the FIA should be working on. So racetracks should be working at this too. Would you agree, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big factor, isn't it? Which is why you get some tracks naturally throwing up more overtaking opportunities than others. And yeah, it's a big consideration for FIA and FOM. The vehicle performance team at Formula One are, well aware of this, and they try and get involved as early as they can with any potential new races or any changes to the track. They are, have the capacity and the expertise to get involved and try and influence that in the right direction for the sport.
Yeah, like that's a good example, Beatrice, of Abu Dhabi Turn 9. I mean, this race
Turn
was not
9,
boring.
yeah.
It was an interesting race, even though the end, the end result didn't really
Exactly.
change, but it was an interesting race.
It was good. Even Mick Schumacher managed to overtake someone in the DRS zone. So it was to me it was good racing. We saw a little
Mick
like
is also leaving. We completely forgot him.
yeah, we didn't even remember Mick.
Yeah, like everyone else during the season.
That's true.
You know?
Sorry, Mick.
Everyone just keeps forgetting Mick.
Yeah, but it was to make everyone keeps forgetting he's there. But I feel like there were still some nice squabbles. Sepp was there in between the Alpines, wasn't he? Between Alonso and Ocon, so that was fun. There was some good racing in there. So
Yeah, was definitely. You're absolutely right there on the importance of the racetracks as well, and how they can also improve the races. But Pete, is ultimately your goal to remove DRS?
oh, good question.
No, I wouldn't say.
Okay, then we can move on. No, so do you think that's something that is not going? I mean, if hypothetically speaking, you get to you create this car that it's really easy to follow the car ahead. Is there really any need for a DRS, or DRS is here to stay because it's actually something useful and it improves the quality of races?
Before I answer, can I just ask what you think of DRS?
I honestly,
He
I mean,
hates it.
I think DRS will be very interesting if all cars had the same power. Having said this, if the cars have different power, not having DRS allows interesting things to happen, such as Alonso missing a championship because he has a guy called Petrov ahead of him. So this is where I stand on this point. But so if you had like two cars equally fast fighting, then I agree that DRS helps to make it more interesting because sure, you will have first an overtake, and the car behind will be able then to use DRS also to overtake, and you'll have a lot of overtakes, and that's interesting. But if it's just two, if you have a car that is behind, it's faster than the car ahead, but just uses the DRS to make it easier to overtake, and then the guy behind has no way to fight it back, then it's not that interesting anymore. So I don't know, Beatrice, you have a similar.
So we've ran around in lots of circles to say that, well, DRS is not that great. I tend to agree. I think it's fun to watch, the guys fighting for first place or second place where they're like wheel to wheel, and it's fun. But when you have like a Mercedes overtaking, I don't know, a Haas or something, it's just like, wait, it's not really doing much there, is it?
Yeah, it's not fair game.
Yeah, I think that
feels a little Formula E to me, which is something I don't like.
Yeah, I get that. I think we're obviously constantly having to strike the right balance of creating the best conditions to have a good race, but without doing anything overly contrived or and I guess you could argue that DRS is a contrived way to create a speed difference to make it easier to overtake. And I think one other way of looking at it is that the way that these cars work, the car behind is naturally has a disadvantage because of the the
Yes.
turbulence, and the DRS is something which, in part, compensates for that disadvantage to kind of bring the following car back up to um, the same kind of speed as the lead car. In terms of lap time, obviously that doesn't make sense for top speed, but in terms of lap time, then you could say that DRS is your way of overcoming the natural barrier to an
Yeah.
overtake, which is the
hmm
the aero effects around corners. And then as we've with our efforts of the last few years and the 2022 regs, we've slightly reduced that disadvantage, hopefully, because the wake is now a bit cleaner. But in reducing that, we've also reduced slipstream,
Yeah.
because if the wake is cleaner, then you also have a clean wake in a straight line, which is not good for the following car. So as we try to reduce aerodynamic interaction and give the following car less of a disadvantage, then we're also kind of taking away that natural slipstream effect. So that is our main reason we're kind of leaving the DRS in there, because drivers are used to having slipstream. Drivers are used to hiding, whether it's a cyclist on in a
Are
in a
you a
race on a push
cyclist,
bike.
Pete? Tell the truth. You are. I can tell.
little bit.
Fun fact, cycling must be the number one hobby for engineers in F1. Is this not true? Every single guy at
I
Red
actually think
Bull
engineers in
was
general.
cycling.
I think I'm hearing more and more engineers cycling.
I don't know what is it with cycling. I'm an engineer too. I hate it. But yeah, Pete, we can tell by your face that you're a cyclist too.
I think it's just that cyclists always have to tell you that they're a cyclist. So I'm sure there's plenty of the hobbies that just don't get shouted about quite as much.
Yeah, sure.
So it's basically cycling that determines the decisions on the aerodynamics of Formula One cars.
I feel like F1
Sure.
aero engineers are cycling to figure out the rules for next year.
There we go. And before we move forward, Pete, just still on this topic, was there any unforeseen effect that occurred with the change of rules, or everything went by the plan?
Mercedes
Could he be referring to?
didn't fare so well.
I don't know, literally anything. Like, for example, Pirelli tires really work very well, and maybe you were not counting with that when you were making the rules. I don't know, anything.
Yeah, I guess the main thing was porpoising. Beatrice just did a wavy hand gesture, which I guess is
Yes.
the international symbol for porpoising.
I don't know.
Yeah, we didn't see that coming. That's probably our main surprise back in Barcelona at preseason testing.
But sorry, Pete, you didn't see that coming, as in when you were designing this, you thought, yeah, those guys in the teams are smart enough. Like, they were not going to do this basic mistake. Or as in, no one really thought about it at all.
Well, I honestly don't know if anyone predicted it in a team. I don't think they did. So we didn't really think that it was something that might happen and the teams might get out of it. We just didn't see it coming at all. It's a hard thing to predict with with our usual aerodynamic tools like a wind tunnel and CFD. I think now in hindsight you can sort of see where it comes from, and it's a very complex phenomenon. I get the feeling it affected each car in a slightly different way as well. So, so it's very complex, but that's probably our main surprise. Back to your question earlier about whether we achieved what we set out to, I think that our second main goal was to try to reduce, to get closer grids. So to reduce the pace difference between the fastest car and the slowest car. And that's something that we haven't really done yet.
I mean, if you take a look, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Pete, but if you look at the constructors' standings, you'll see that actually a lot of the teams that didn't score any points last year managed to do so this year. So I'd actually argue that you managed to decrease the gap a little bit, at least make it more interesting.
Yeah, I think there's probably ways that we can chop up the data to say that there has been an improvement. But personally, last year and the year before, I was imagining a scenario where any team could fight for a podium and it not be a surprise for them to be fighting for that podium.
Let's not forget Latifi. I don't think
but
just any team could.
But that's actually interesting, Pit, because were you aiming to achieve that, like a more balanced championship, through the new era rules or through the cost cap? I mean, the era rules, the way you did it, will also make the cars more balanced, or will this only be possible to achieve with the cost cap rule?
The cost what? Sorry?
The cost cap. So, like, the cost cap will be,
Is that
I'm
a
assuming,
money thing?
Yeah, money thing. But will this rule?
This is in general.
I'm assuming be.
No, clearly that
genuine
was
question. Like, I didn't know that the error rules could also help creating a more balanced championship. I truly assumed that only the cost cap was targeting this goal.
No, it was very much one of our goals as well. So yeah, clearly the cost cap had that as a primary goal. Making the team's business models more viable and making it more equitable and reducing the advantage of having lots of money. But also, we kind of, from a technical regulations point of view, attacked it in parallel from a different viewpoint, from a different position. So we wanted to make it cheaper to create a fast car.
Makes sense. While we're on this cost cap, can I ask you just a personal opinion? Okay, because I saw that the cost cap is set to be lowered again next year until 2025, so from 2023 to 2025. I just want to know your opinion on this. So Max last year, obviously the controversy with Hamilton and the lapped cars, and this year there was the cost cap scandal, which I won't ask you if it pays off to break the rules. Obviously it does, because Red Bull ended up paying
spending at the canteen.
Exactly. But my question is, do you think these scandals, let's call it that, almost tainted Max's titles because he had a little help?
Totally, completely robbed everything. The guy has 0 championships.
I think he's great. I think he's a great racing driver. I just think these little things might have, decreased his credibility a little bit as a 2-time world champion.
I don't know. I'm sure there are people out there like yourself who think that. And I imagine there's probably an equally sensible viewpoint on the other side. But yeah, I don't really have a view on that, to be honest.
I don't think it made a difference. I'm just arguing, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I think it didn't really make a difference. I think spending more money or not, and this is, going back to the cost cap, making it easier for the grid to be more or better balanced, if you will. I don't think it does actually make a difference or that much of a difference. I think good teams are at the top, not because they have, Mercedes, sure, they have a huge infrastructure, so I think that does make a difference. But in terms of Red Bull, I think they were clearly on this path of getting increasingly better. And, setting a cost cap didn't really make a difference. And them overspending it wasn't the reason why Max won the championship and they won the constructors championship.
They were better fed. All the stuff.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know,
Mm-hmm.
the championship last year of Verstappen is right up there with Prost championship that was handed over to him. Right there, right up there, like with the two most um, scandalous championships, that were ever given. But those are like past waters. But going back to what you were saying, Beatrice, to be honest with you, like this year, the only team that really missed the breathing, like we already discussed this year in previous episodes, was Red Bull, because I have the feeling that Ferrari, Mercedes, uh, even Alpine and McLaren, I have the sense that they were closer this year compared to last year.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Agreed.
and Red Bull was really the only team that was it at other level, was at completely different galaxy.
Well, Ferrari in the beginning of the season seemed to be quite close. And then it all went downhill from there. And I don't know if it was a matter of strategy and not. So we had Pete, we had my boss, Mark Preston from Formula E on one of the episodes. And I actually asked him about this. And he said something like, when you're not used to win, you make rookie mistakes. And he was just arguing that Ferrari, because they've been on this dry spell, let's call it, for so many years, they just weren't used to making good strategic decisions. They weren't a well-oiled machine. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I guess there's got to be a certain degree of match fitness in terms of being used to having those decisions at the top. I'm no strategist, so I don't really know how those decisions that Ferrari perhaps regret now. I don't really know how that goes wrong, really. But yeah, and I suppose, but I do imagine that once you do make a few decisions that you regret or controversial decisions, then the focus and the pressure might snowball, and I
Mm-hmm.
can certainly imagine how they might come in groups. And whereas on the flip side, if you're winning, you've got good pace in the car, you've made a few good strategy calls, that probably is a healthy thing for any team, isn't it? And probably
Mm-hmm.
is the best environment to then go and make more good decisions. But yeah, but in terms of how that happened at Ferrari, and what the contributors to some of their mistakes this season, I don't really know.
Should we go back to 2021? I wanna ask you about this. So there's a lot of controversy at the end of the championship. I'm just curious. Obviously, the FIA made some changes. You fired a race director, and now this year you had two.
Pete personally,
Yeah, I actually delivered the news.
Oh, that must have been a
And made
tense, awkward
made the
conversation.
decision.
I was just wondering that this obviously your rule changed or the wording of the rule changed, and I'm just curious. Did this event last year in Abu Dhabi trigger more conversations within the FIA about rules and consistency, and how did you manage to do that this year? Because a lot of drivers complained about the FIA being a little bit inconsistent with penalties. So I'm just wondering, sort of what happened after Abu Dhabi last year. I imagine a lot of meetings.
case in point, the half points
Yes.
this
Yeah.
year to Verstappen and everyone else, which weren't supposed to be half points, but only 25% of them. But whatever.
It was a very tumultuous year, 2021, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, so I actually only joined the FIA this year in February because
Nice
the
save.
So you
aero
can't talk
team.
about anything last year.
So
Done.
because the aero team used to be at Formula One management, and then
Mhm.
in time for the new regs, we moved over to FIA.
Right. Okay.
But I guess what I will say on that is that in my sort of limited experience in Formula One, compared to lots of people, I think it goes in cycles, like how the FIA regulate in terms of the sporting infringements, because I think it goes, and that's by cycle. I mean that I think you tend to have a period where you have to crack down on drivers for certain errors to be consistent with times you might have cracked down on that in the past.
Yeah.
And you have to be, and you end up getting more stricter and stricter, and then you go. Then there's a call for let them race and let things go, and that happened a few years ago, didn't it? Where we sort of FAA agreed to kind of let things go a bit more and not get involved where it wasn't necessary to. And I think that was a popular decision at the time. But then I think as little incidents happen and build up, and things that do need reacting to or penalising, I think the natural thing is to gradually get more strict with the drivers until you get to the point where you want to let them race again. So I just think this is just a natural course of the sport, is that we have these debates and we go through a bit of a cycle. But obviously lots of changes were made for this season.
But Pete, do you feel that the fast growth of the sport, in terms of popularity, and mainly in the US market, which something completely new,
Yeah, we've
really
talked
put a
about
lot
this
of
many
pressure on
times.
FIA now to in a way that maybe they weren't used? Or is this something new? Is something felt in the organization, the growth of the popularity of the sport, or doesn't really change the way you work?
I guess the general trend is that that popularity and exposure ultimately drives the pressure on the regulator, doesn't it? Which is why the F1 rulebook is so much thicker than any other racing series.
Okay, understood. So before we move forward to other segments of this show, Beatriz, I will just let you had you wanted to comment on some very controversial rules for next year as well that are going to change regarding fashion.
Yeah, this is not really controversial. This is something that I was surprised to. Researching for this show, the FIA came up with some interesting rules this year about team uniforms having to be worn in TV interviews. And if you're in the top 3, race suits cannot be undone from the neck until after the podium ceremony, which I imagine in somewhere like Abu Dhabi seems to be a pretty weird rule. And to me, the one that struck me the most was a new rule that said parc fermé protocols cannot be interfered with by drivers. What happened? I'm just curious. Is this something that happened because of a specific incident, or who came up with this and why? It seems to be very vague.
I have to hold my hands up and say I have no idea.
Probably not even the person that wrote
I can confirm one thing, that it's not aerodynamics related. So the race suits in the interviews, it might be an aerodynamic thing with that one, in terms of ventilation and airflow. But the part ferme thing, no, I'm afraid I don't know.
Okay, then looking forward for 2023, which will be the longest ever, but it will be shorter. We'll have a tighter schedule than we had before. So are we going to have any winter shutdown, for example, next year, like there was being discussed? Is this something that's already defined?
I think Toto Wolff made a comment on about that it would be good to have a winter shutdown, asking the FIA to have a winter shutdown.
This is a lot of pressure for the staff, all this traveling.
But it's also better. It's also better to finish earlier, isn't it? Because last year, I think the last race was a week before Christmas, which I'm sure doesn't give a lot of time to pack up from Abu Dhabi, go back to England, and
buy the gifts.
Yes,
Christmas tree.
Exactly.
So by a winter shutdown, you mean
just having 2 weeks off? Yeah, having 2 weeks off,
mandatory
like you have in
closure of
summer.
all the factories.
Yes.
I do remember that discussion happening. I don't know where we are with it, how much support it has. You certainly see the merits in giving staff well-deserved time off. This is not really my area, but I guess it also could increase the pressure on the second half of the winter, if you've forced teams to close down in the early part of the winter in that kind of busy period where you're releasing and manufacturing your next year's car. So I can maybe understand if that was a reason to oppose it. But yeah, I don't really know where we stand with that for the future.
Okay, let's wait and see. And as for predictions next season, is Red Bull going to dominate now for the following years, or can we expect?
Let's
some
put it
changes?
this way: who do you think adjusted better to the aero rules, and who do you think seems to be on a good path to excel again next year?
I think I have to be a bit careful with that.
Okay.
But
I think we can all agree that Ricardo
With its-
couldn't get on with his McLaren. I think he did the worst out of everyone.
yeah, I think that with the first year of a big rule change, then as we know in this period, things changing quite rapidly, aren't they?
Mhm.
So with the cost cap in, then we perhaps didn't see a huge amount of evolution of the cars over this year, because teams obviously have to be a bit more careful with how many updates they bring to the car. But I think that we can expect to see quite a few changes from year to year. So as all teams have taken everything they've learned from this year, put it into next year's car, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a few changes in ranking, which yeah, I think it's natural to the fact that these rules are still new, and that aim to have closer grids. I think we have some confidence that will happen naturally over the next few years as teams understand these regulations ever more.
While we're on this topic of Ricardo not being able to drive his McLaren, do you think it was a good career decision for him if he ends up going to Red Bull as a reserve driver? My question is, wouldn't he be better off driving for Haas? Because he still wants to stay in F1, right? He's looking for a seat in 2024. He's said it publicly many times. So what would you do if you were him, is my question. What would be the best career move? Because he hasn't fared very well in the last couple of years. He went from Red Bull to Renault and then from Renault to McLaren. None of these moves seem to be the right fit for him, I think, or the right thing to do at the time. So do you think he's on the right track to come back to F1?
I guess you could look at the stats, couldn't you? And also it depends what he wants. If he just wants to race in Formula One, then yeah, I guess the best thing to do would be to grab the first seat that's available. If he has aspirations of race wins and championships, then yeah, you might be thinking more long term. Or like we said earlier, you might be happy to be on his glide path out of the sport. Who knows? But I think yeah, it's hard to say really, but I can understand the attraction of going back to a team as successful as Red Bull.
It totally makes sense. I mean,
But he's
Perez
not
will be
going back to the
fired
team.
mid-season.
No.
Check is
he's
fired
just being-
mid-season. They will call Ricardo. Done. It makes
No, I
total
think
sense.
Ricardo is going to
Total
be
sense.
used. I think that's sort of like an illusion, in my opinion, at least, because I think he's going to be used more as a marketing prop than anything else. I feel like
Sure thing. Someone has to compensate the lack of marketing skills of Verstappen. So
they were actually very good together. I would argue that the two of them together made for the best bits that Red Bull came up with. The best sketches. They used to do great
Ricardo
promos with the two of
disagrees.
them.
Ricardo disagrees. That's why he left. But never mind. Let's just
Sure.
see how it goes. The only thing that we're sure, and to wrap it up, everything that we've discussed here is that McLaren is clearly on a growing trend and is going to be world champion in the following 2 years.
Just for
That's
context,
correct, right?
Pete,
This is
Thiago
correct, right, Pete?
is a big McLaren fan, and he thought they had a shot this year at winning.
This was my
championships.
understanding of this conversation. I don't know if about yours, but I mean, I still remember
Alright.
that on the on the preseason that McLaren was right up there with Ferrari, being the fastest cars, and
That
they're just
never,
waiting.
that no.
They're
I
just
don't
waiting a
think.
year, warm it up, and then you'll see with Piastri and Norris, the most exciting driver lineup of the paddock. I know Pete
Well.
seems very convinced, and he's not even saying a word.
Well, if that's what you think is going to happen, then yeah, I'm into it.
There you go. That's the way to go. If I think something, that's what's going to happen. Like it sounds like the smartest thing that was said in the show in a long time. Thank God João is not here.
Yes.
Only without him, this type of brilliance is possible to be shared and said.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. So I think we can conclude our review of the race and also of the season. And Beatrice, so how are the standings then? How did this championship end?
So no surprise, Max took first place with 454 points. Then Leclerc, Checo in third, and then George Russell, which was a surprise this year. I'm not a big fan of Russell. I don't know what your opinion is, Pete, but I think he's a little bit overrated just because he's British. But I think he did. I do think so, but I think he did better than Hamilton this year. Well, obviously in terms of points, but just in terms of performance, I felt like he was a little bit better than Hamilton, which was surprising.
Well, he won the race. Hamilton didn't. So.
And what happens if you have two British people in a team? Does the overratedness sort of cancel each other out, or does it just?
I think he was always overrated.
Well, I've just watched England win 6-2 in the football, so I'm feeling very nationalistic. So,
who are you playing against? Who is England playing against?
Iran.
Okay, fine. Let you guys have this one because I don't care much for Iran right now. So on fifth place, we have Sainz, which was disappointing to me because I was expecting him to do a little bit better.
To be world champion. We know.
No, I don't think he's world champion material, but I think he's certainly better than a fifth place in that Ferrari. But, it is what it is. Then Hamilton in sixth, Lando Norris in seventh, another overrated British driver.
Overrated? Overachiever, you mean? Like, how the hell are you pull 122 points with that car?
It's easy to overachieve when you're next to Ricardo, isn't it?
I don't see the logic of that argument. Sure.
João wouldn't let me get away with this if he was here, but I feel like it was easy for Lando to shine this year because Ricardo really did not adjust to the car. Like he couldn't figure out. It's true.
Sure, because the points that Ricardo didn't make go automatically to his teammate. Makes total sense. Sure, please continue. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, in eighth place, Ocon with 92 points, then Alonso with 81, Bottas in 10th with 49 points.
And that's our top 10, and everyone else doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, no, I think we're good. And then constructor standings, we have Red Bull in first with 759 points, then Ferrari with 554, Mercedes in third with 515, then Alpine, McLaren, Alfa Romeo in sixth, Aston Martin in seventh, Haas in eighth, AlphaTauri in ninth place. This was kind of surprising to me. I would think they would do better this year.
AlphaTauri was a huge disappointment this year.
It was this year.
It was.
I wasn't expecting them to do so bad.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that Tsunoda ends the championship with the exact same spots of Mick Schumacher, and Mick is going away.
I don't think Yuki is as bad. I don't know, Pete. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess the points don't tell the full story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting fact. And,
and then Williams in 10th.
With 8 points. This
With
is like the
points.
best scoring of Williams in a long time. So it's good for Williams. I see them growing year after year.
Tiago, do you wanna? So we always do the F1 fantasy, Pete. I don't know if you play this.
Yeah, it's the championship that truly matters.
I used to play this actually.
Oh, you
Um,
have?
I used to play, yeah, but it all got a little bit too much, so I had to let it go.
Oh, did you start feeling
Was
that?
it getting too intense for you, fantasy?
A little bit, yeah.
Were you
No, it's
using
fun.
inside
It's fun.
information
No, I'm just a
to
sore
pick your
loser.
team?
So
Tiago, do you want to tell
Yes,
you
I will.
our
I will
top
share
three?
with you. It was a very interesting last race with obviously most of the people that still had wild cards to use, not wild cards, sorry, mega drivers to use. They employed all of them this race.
I don't think
which I
I've
think
ever
Beatriz,
changed
you
my
weren't
team.
exactly. You weren't one of them,
No,
but that
because I
didn't
forget. I
stop
keep
you.
forgetting to change my team, and then I
Yes,
end up
that didn't
not
stop you.
doing anything for the whole year.
But with great results, truly.
Yeah.
So for Abu Dhabi, we had in first, drum roll. Wait, I'm still waiting here to to open the page. But so Beatriz, please continue with your drum roll. Here we have. So, oh my God, I cannot say the name of this team. It's the infamous Verstappen. Oh my God, you know the team, Beatriz, right?
Yes. That's why I
Verstappen
asked you to say.
Oconas.
This
Damn
is
it! You knew
it's
this.
just Pete. This is just a well.
Terrible name.
It's a Portuguese joke.
It's whatever. It's awful. Anyway, Verstappen
Best
is
kind of joke.
Oconas in first position. Then in second, Lino Racing Team. In third, Sif Latif. I don't know this guy, but these three gentlemen closed the podium in Abu Dhabi. And then the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh, all of them use the Mega Driver. In fifth, we have the famous Heidi Berger Racing from the
This
team
is
of
João's
João.
team.
Exactly. In 12th, Papayams without Mega Driver, which was very, very impressive performance by my team. And the season ended with On Purpose in first. So On Purpose is our champion of
Yes.
our fantasy league. Congrats to On Purpose. With 4,463 points. Then we have Team 1 that takes the prize for most original name of our fantasy league with 4,425 points. And in third, Pedroso Racing overtaking in the last race Abu Dhabi Scam F1 team.
Yes.
Impressive stuff by Pedroso Racing. And in our inner championship, Beatriz, you won. Beatriz,
won.
you won. Yes, you did. Smooth
No Mega
operation.
Driver, no wild card, no changing my team the whole year.
No need. In 12, smooth operation with 4,086 points. Immediately followed by myself, Papayams, in 15th. I don't know if you remember, Beatriz, but for most of the season, I was 30-something. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Clap for me, please.
Okay.
Out of how many?
With how many points?
I think no.
Out of how many?
Out of how many? 66. It's
So you've gone from sort of solid mid-table up to
was good.
fighting
I'm like
for
in the first third.
Champions League.
Yeah, pretty good.
Well, I finished in 12th, so I feel like that's a better.
Yeah, and in last João with in 20th. Which I mean, it clearly says a lot about this fantasy league where knowledge is totally unnecessary.
And life,
this is
I think.
a sore loser right here, Pete. Here we have a sore loser, if I ever seen one.
That's it. That's for a fantasy. And regarding then the other segment that we usually have, Pete, is we call it Casino, where we bet on every week, or sorry, every race, for a winner and for a driver to end in top 10. And to make it fun, we decided to invest all the money we had, fake money, obviously, for the last race. And the result, the outcome of that decision is I ended up with 0, Beatriz ended up with 0, and João ended up with a fortune, which is kind of pointless really to count because he picked Verstappen to be the winner, and he picked Stroll to end in top 10.
Which he did, right?
Which he did. It's kind of insane. But,
Against most odds.
So João is the glorious victor of our casino segment. Congrats to João. Claps to you. Claps to you, João. Claps to you. And before finishing the episode, let's go to Esbardalhanço da Semana, Beatriz.
Sure, crash of the week. Esbardalhanço da Semana. So I didn't
Crash
even
of the
know crash of the week, right? Let's call it crash of the week. So we do this thing, Pete, where we always choose a crash where no one got hurt. Full disclaimer, everyone's fine. But we chose a crash that happened, was it last weekend? I think last weekend in Macau. So the Macau GP is a very weird race. I don't know if you like it, Pete, have you seen it?
I've seen bits of it, yeah. I didn't watch last week, though.
The crashes, the bits that you've seen.
It's not
Were they
really
the
a
crashes?
race. It's more as they put cars in street, and then they see what happened. They just let them go.
It's a very confusing and dangerous event.
So this crash, there's not much to say about this crash. So this was the GT race, and these drivers are so good that this was the.
They're amateur
start.
drivers too, right, Tiago? I think they're amateur drivers. Amateurish.
I'm not sure if this year they were. So for the last 2 seasons, yes, because no one could enter in China, so only local drivers were allowed.
That's a very good point.
To race, and the quality of the local drivers, I guess it will place them in, like go-karting drivers, on a weekend with your friends. I guess will be kind of the equivalent quality.
When we go karting.
Yeah. Do you go, I guess you go kart as well, Pete?
Very little. I think I've done it
Seriously?
3 times or 4. Actually, did it with João the last time.
Oh, but is it something as like
Portimao.
the regulators are not allowed to
Portimao.
race, like conflicts of interest? So they just pick people that don't drive at all at FIA. Is it something like that? Like regulators can drive at all, or people at FIA they actually drive cars?
I think.
Do people know what are cars in FIA?
I don't think there's any policy on it.
Okay.
But
Let's not be too aggressive, Tiago. We want Pete to come back and tell us about financials next year.
No.
So.
We definitely want him to come back. Also, because I have a request to do at the end of the show. But anyway, so this to tell you that
I think the FIA prioritize handsome, clever people.
Oh wow!
They don't care about.
Bold statement here. Okay.
that is very, very sad to hear, João. You will never find a job there. Anyway, so formation lap, race starts, everyone crashes. Pretty much this. It's fun to watch. Go watch it. I think like half of the cars stay there. And
it's almost like do you have it in England, Pete? Is it like bumper cars? Is that what you call it? When half the cars just go against each other. Yeah, just gone wrong. It's pretty much. Yeah. So it's well worth the watch.
What do you mean, like a Dodgem?
Destruction Derby.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like bumper cars. When you have those, well, there's no wheels on it, are they? And you're just on this closed. I don't even know what to call this. This is not a track, like an amusement park, right?
like a sort of a platform.
Exactly. So this is what it looks like to me.
Maybe a
if you
few
could
sort
actually
of
crash.
discarded candy floss, that
Exactly.
spilt fizzy drinks and
Wasn't
stuff. Yeah.
wasn't Alonso in one of those in last race in Brazil when you bumped into Ocon?
Yeah.
He was,
Let's
right?
not.
It was like in
Let's
one
not.
of those.
Let's not go.
Anyway,
Let's
so
talk about
that
that
was
again.
the crash of the week and really kind of the crash of the season. The show is over. Thanks a lot for being with us for the entire year and putting up with Beatriz mostly.
Harsh.
Pete, before we go, can we rely on you to get us tickets for Vegas next year? It was worth trying. I had to try.
Very dry, very blunt, straight to the point.
Damn it.
No.
Damn
If
it.
anything changes, I'll let you know. But I don't think I'll be going myself.
No?
Do you actually get to go to
So-
races? I'm curious. Do you get to go to races, Pete?
Yeah, occasionally. So we go along to help with the, well, for a few reasons. We go along to, kick some tires and stay abreast of how the cars are evolving, and also do a few things to help with the scrutineering kind of scanning process of the cars. But yeah, I went to 4 races this year. I probably won't do as many next year, but we'll see. So yeah, we go to occasionally, but I just went to the ones nearby, European ones. There's no point in me flying out to Vegas or Japan or anywhere fun.
I bet you wish you could.
Pete, great stuff. Thanks a lot for this. Whenever you're making new rules, if you need advisory, talk to us. We have great ideas.
Do
to
not call
improve
Tiago.
this sport, from fireworks to rockets, you name it. Will be so much fun. We're full of ideas, just so you know. Okay.
Absolutely. Well,
Not
I think
a-
that's one of the great
Not
things
one
about
of them
F1
is
fans
good.
there isn't a single F1 fan that has no ideas about how to improve the sport. So,
Right?
We're very
corporate
committed.
fans, always
No,
You always
honestly,
come away
you
a little
should
bit wiser.
you should allow the fans, you should literally
Just a
leave
suggestion
one
box.
rule,
You
just
should have a
rule,
suggestion box.
Exactly, just like a rule per year that will be voted, and you'll just have to somehow insert that on the rule book.
Yeah, or every single person is allowed one like Joker rule they can play.
This seems like a good idea. Yes.
So we can kind of like crowdsource the regulations.
I see.
I just want to hear comms again. I just want to hear Toto and Christian complaining to the race director again. Bring back the communications,
Definitely.
please.
That was-
the
that
radio
was good.
communications. That was
Totally
the biggest
agree.
loss for me this year. I want to hear those
Okay.
babies crying.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
That's my
'Cause
suggestion.
It really killed the need to watch Drive to Survive. That thing was perfect. It really saved me a lot of time. Pete, once again, thanks a lot. And
Thank you, Pete.
see you all next year for a new season of Formula One where McLaren is going to win the championship. It's going to be next year, I'm sure.
Sure.
Bye.
See you next year. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Last place at the end of lap 1 comes home to win.
What the is this guy doing?
But I just want to say you're an absolute legend.
Holy mac and cheese balls. That's another podium.
That was stupid from whoever was at the front. They want to kill us or what? Can you believe it? Can you believe it?